Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And with me in this episode, I have someone who is a principal consultant for the Family Business Consulting Group and co-author of the new book, which is Own It, How to Develop a Family Enterprise Owner's Mindset at Every Age. Barbara Dartt, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I was just stumbled over it because Dartt spelled normally with one T. And, so, I thought, hang on a minute, was it Dartt or something like that? Sorry, my dyslexia kind of like got
English.
Yeah. Anyway, Barbara, yeah, so you've got this new book out, obviously co-authored with some other authors. They're not on the show with me. I normally have one or two maybe sometimes, but no worries, but our listeners will get the gist of what this book's about by the end of this conversation. So what is the book about roughly before we launch into your work and the book?
Yeah. So I'm going to start, Dave, with just a real basic kind of philosophy around family business. And it's a very simple 3-circle Venn diagram, which I'm sure you can picture in your head. People overuse that, and we do too, but it really is the best straightforward way to explain family business. There are, we believe, in any family business, no matter how small, 3 systems that work all the time. The family system itself, you can imagine a mom and dad, or even 2 siblings and their children, plus the sibling spouses. You know about the business system, right? There's a P&L and there's an operating company probably. And then we talk about the ownership system. As family businesses start, say it's a guy and his partner or 2 brothers, they start this business, those all overlap. What's good for the family is good for the business, is good for the ownership, because the leadership of those systems, it's all the same. Family leadership, the business leadership, and owners, all the same. As family businesses grow, family systems grow, right? We get cousins and nephews and nieces and stepchildren, lots of complexity. As the business grows, we get maybe some real estate with it. We might have another operating company. We get increased complexity there. We end up hiring middle management. And sometimes the owners grow. We lose a partner. Maybe their spouse becomes an owner. We split those. So imagine those 3 overlapping circles spreading out, and the overlap of what's good for the family, what's good for the business, what's good for the owners is this tiny little spot in the middle. There's only a few of people in the system who fit all 3 of those roles anymore, but there's others in the other 7 spaces that get created. And so trying to understand what's my role? Am I an owner and a manager? Am I a family member and an owner and I don't work there? Therefore, what voice do I have? So what do I influence? And what choices do I have? What decisions do I get to make? That's why I have a job as a family business consultant, trying to manage that complexity, the boundaries, understanding your roles, contributing with different perspectives and places in that system. This book is about the ownership system and what we think is an overlooked role often. So, you can go to business school and get an MBA. People really understand the hierarchy in a business. We all grew up in a family, functional or dysfunctional. We get what that, could look like. But the ownership group, inherently, you don't get a lot of reps with that. It's not something you intuitively understand. And in family business, as you probably have friends or relatives who this has happened to, sometimes you inherit ownership. You didn't put money in. You don't have any skin in the game. You didn't create the vision or the legacy. And sometimes you're real proud of that and excited about it. And sometimes it's a burden because it, maybe dictates where you went to school or what degree you got or what range of jobs you thought you could get. So if you inherit ownership, really understanding what it means to take risks, to make tough decisions, that's unclear. And so for family business, we all three of us came from different places and different experiences around why this was important to us. But I'll tell you the reason that it seemed powerful to me was, I come from an ag background. I worked in my early career with a lot of farms and had a lot of real estate and a lot of care and love for the business, but not room for all the next gens to come back. So you had a group who loved the business, was proud of it, but went off to college and got a job in the city and, didn't work there. Ownership gives folks like that, if we embrace this, a way to still be part of the business but not work there. And again, as those circles expand, sometimes people do not think about that. How do you do a good job as an owner if you don't work there every day? We all know about the stock market. Sure, you can do that. That's a public company, but that's not our company. You can't be a good owner if you don't work here. So really for me, it was thinking about how people's pride in ownership, but pride in belonging, right? You belong to that family business because you grew up there. How do they get to embrace that and feel a little bit like they're contributing without having to go back and work there? Or how do they bring the specific and new talents that they've developed as they've gone out in the world back to that business in a way that's powerful? So for me, that was that was the real genesis. How do we bring people an awareness that this ownership role is a separate one that can be embraced and trained for, and again, it doesn't fit for everyone, but if we have these what we call non-operating owners, they don't work there but they own the business, how do we help those folks feel like contributors? How do we feel the folks that are working in the business and have a real burden? They live in the little town, have the same last name. I have a client who is part of the family business when the family donated enough money to make his school football field renewed. And so it became named with his last name when he was there in high school, right? Like it's a burden. You live with that. So how do we help the folks that are still in the business and owners feel good about these non-operating owners who might live in a state or two away? And how do we help those owners, those non-operating owners, really feel like they contribute? And there's more complexity to it. There's more kinds of owners and other ways you can be involved, but that's what drove me to really to think that this book was important, just to really help people embrace and understand and then train for this really kind of vague role of ownership.
Yeah, no, that's quite interesting and quite a quite a long introductory introduction to the book, I suppose. But no, it's good to have all that information there. To start with, before we talk about also your role as a consultant as well, I'd just like to throw a couple of curveballs. I have had a recent guest. I think his actual podcast went live today, so well, this will be going out in a couple of weeks' time, so they have to check back 2 weeks before. So if you're listening now, so he was a family owner, but I think he had to stop it, and he says like consulting similar ways about his mistakes he made as a family business owner. And one thing that comes to mind, because I was going to start a business with a friend while I was in the fire service. Actually, we do these extra side hustles, you call them. And then another curveball I'm going to throw is the Singapore model. But, when it went from third world or developing country, not third world, to now one of the most global business cities in the world. So the first one was that when I said, I'm going to go into business, but this is happening, that's happening, people, especially at work, in the fire, we chat about things around the kitchen table, you call it, or the dinner table. One of the words someone said was, it'll only end up in tears. And it probably could have almost, because I fell out with this person in the end anyway. I didn't go into business, and it was a lot of money we was talking about to put into certain things. So this is something that came to mind with this recent guest I was talking about as well. So these people inherit these businesses, and of course, if you're non-operational, obviously, like you say, you just basically become an owner, and it's a privilege. It's a bit like saying, well, you just inherited some shares, if you like, with a company, because when you buy shares, you're a part owner of a company, aren't you? Irrespective of what percentage.
Yeah.
But and so you're not operational, but with family members, I mean, you do have family fuels. I can't pronounce the word properly, but you do have arguments in family. I do anyway, but we try and resolve it and things like that. When there's a business involved, and that saying that always stuck to my head, oh, it'll only end up in tears when certain things, because there's a lot of money. And this guy did, he had to I think he got basically someone sold the business behind his back. He lost a lot of money, and it was a family member and things like that. What would you say in terms of what you've just described about family business ownership and the work you do, and the fact that all this could happen? I mean, this is kind of like we spoke about obstacles and things. This is kind of huge, isn't it, within families that it's different if you're dealing with a partner. You can say, well, I don't really know him too well, but when it's a family member that stabs you in the back, if you like, with a lot of money and a business,
Mhm. Or even if you just disagree, that you work with them every day and you're supposed to have Christmas with them, and you're tired of the decisions they've been making, or showing up late to every meeting, or I mean, it's the stuff that frustrates you about colleagues some days, but then you have to have time perhaps outside the business too. It can get really wearing. It raises the stakes on being successful for sure. And Dave, your example is a good one. Like you had, as you said, you had a choice around picking a partner and you chose not to. When you inherit, we call that, partnership by chance, not by choice. Or, you win the last name lottery and end up being partners with folks. I think the tricky part is, if you had, I mean, you would have gotten advice from your friends perhaps to try and avoid having it end up in tears, would be to put an agreement together. Here's how we're going to make decisions. Here's a level of decision I can make without you. Here's why we would sell it. Here's how we're going to grow it. Here's when we expect to get money out of it. Maybe not for the next 2 years. Like you would have, had good advice to sit down and at least go through some of those things at a time. When you're in a family business, sometimes that level of formality, which is sort of like, yeah, that's good business, it feels weird because you're in a family system. And by nature, family systems they tend to be pretty inclusive. No matter how bad you screw up, you get to be a part of it. I mean, the prodigal son's kind of the gold standard. He wasted his inheritance early, and his dad still had a party for him when he chose to come home. Like that's what family's supposed to be, the place you can always be at home. And so adding formality, talking about entrances and exits, like it just feels so foreign and uncomfortable. And so if we can't change those hats, okay, we're sitting down right now, we're talking about this as potential owners together. I'm not your brother anymore. We're going to have a brother relationship over here, and that's going to be different. But here, we're going to talk about what might cause us to disagree and how we're going to agree, and when you might get to make a decision or overrule me, maybe. Right. So it's the inheritance. So you never really put your money in. That's hard to get your head around. And then it's the sort of juxtaposing of this business, kind of black and white. We like to say it's not that simple, but much more straightforward. It's good or bad in business, with this whole family where you're supposed to be included no matter what. That just gets to be psychologically a hard, I think, paradox to hold in your head. That kind of underlies some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Once again, I mean, obviously, family business, they survive, they go on forever. So there's I'm just throwing that curveball because obviously, I'm thinking, well, if that was a family member and all that happened, it's like it's really a difficult moment because
absolutely. But I would say, Dave, too, even when family relationships are great, this causes trouble. And I'll tell you how. So, I've got one family business I worked with, 4 next gens. Dad was second gen, but he really grew this business to the scale that it was at. It was a meaningful size. He transferred ownership for tax reasons, very common, right? It wasn't, he was happy to have his children have it, but it really was to mitigate tax. He did what a lot of people don't, which is started to include them in meetings and train them about ownership. So some people transfer the ownership and then pretend that it does I mean, in their mind, it was done for tax reasons. But to your point, you're a shareholder. All of a
Yeah.
sudden you just got that. What does that mean for you? Do you have any decision rights? Do you have any seat at the table?
Yeah, that's
So
it.
this guy
Yeah.
did a great job. He actually included his children's spouses as well, because he said,
All
right, you guys
right.
are, you're
Yeah,
a
yeah.
team. You're to make decisions together. If these have financial impacts on your family, then you deserve to be at the table too. So he did a great job with all of that. The challenge was this. He was a good leader. He was well spoken, super respected in the community, a great human being, a strong businessman, very well respected. You inherited shares from him. Clearly, he gave it to you. You're not entitled. Those kids were those, and they weren't kids. They were 30. Next gens were not entitled. They didn't expect any financial reward. They understood that it was a tax move. But who am I to sit at this table with my dad, who grew his whole business and just gave me this gift? I'm supposed to weigh in? Are you like, what? Doesn't make any sense at all. So even when relationships are great, getting your head around the responsibilities and sometimes the rewards, when they fit and when they don't, of ownership, there's still a lot of barrier to really voicing your opinions. I mean, he's still at the table. I'm happy. I'll come. Happy to put the time in. But you make the calls, because you clearly have done this your whole life and you're going to do it way better than I am. So
Yeah.
yeah. Even when
Makes
it's
sense.
good, it's tough.
Makes sense. Well, the other curveball is more delving into my politics degree a little bit, and the fact that I lived
Yeah.
out in Southeast Asia for about semi-retired. I'm back in London, UK. Well, not London actually, but in the UK. But I'm actually going to London in a minute, in a few hours' time. But it's not to America. That's nothing, is it? Really, you drive for 8 hours to work sometimes, and things like that. So that's nothing.
Yeah.
Um, right. Okay. So I mentioned Singapore
Yeah.
because when the prime minister who passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a leader there for about 50 years. So it was really a poor country when it went independent of Malaysia, and it's still a British Commonwealth, a member of the British Commonwealth, but it's not a colony. Um, so it was purely a country of its own. It's pretty much like saying New York, really. It went independent of the whole of America, or California. Went independent of the whole of America. That can happen. So one of the things he said, well, obviously he cleared up things like racism and things like that. There was a lot of that going on, Chinese and Indians and things like that. So he wrote laws, just really pushed them out. And one of the things he said was, look, I'm going to clear up for it to be a successful business city, which it is, a business country for people to travel to.
Yeah.
I'm going to clear up nepotism, nothing like family, being involved and things like that. Everybody has the opportunity to set a business up. It's not really, So that's one of the things that he said, or people say, was a success of Singapore. So what do you say to that in terms of that model in comparison with what you promote? Or is it something completely different?
So I mean, there's a lot of paradox in family business. I would say that's another one. And I'll give you an example from a call I had with a client this week. And I had the same call with a very similar call with a different client last year. So one of the first things we recommend folks do even if you have next gens and it's just, say, a mom and dad and some kids, and you're not even sure it's going to be a family business, might just be a sole proprietorship, put a family employment policy in place. That describes what we expect out of any family member who's going to work at the business. And I have a client who calls it a nepotism policy. But
Yeah.
so yeah, to your point, right? It could be called that too. And it might say that, look, if you want to work in the summers here as an intern, we're not expecting you to come work here full time. But even if you want to do that, here's the things that we expect you to behave at least as well as the employees. Here's the handbook. And we need you to remember that you've got our last name. And therefore, your words carry more weight and your actions, carry more volume with them. So you have more scrutiny. We want you to understand that. And therefore, your behavior's actually got an expectation above an employee level. That's what we need from you. At the same time, we really believe that our family values and our ability to work and play together because of this business are part of why we do this. So we would love to have family members come back and work in the business if it fits for you and your career and it fits for the business. So here's how we balance it. Over here, we want employees back who are family members because we think they bring something special and unique that other people, don't bring. And you gotta earn it, and then you gotta behave at a higher level. So they try and embody that in a policy. The cha- the interesting discussion I had recently, and again last year with a different client, was this. So we have this next gen. Really, really interesting. This family particularly has a very clear policy that says you have to work. You have to have a college degree to come back and work here full time, and you got to go work somewhere for 3 years and be successful there, and then we'll consider you to return. Which makes tons of sense. We need people coming back who are confident and independent and are going to bring value. They have most of the next gens are in careers. They're off and running. They have just two in the business, and they have somebody who's been working there part-time. She just took a part-time job while she was getting her own career up and running. She's done excellent at the part-time job. Her own career hasn't gone as well as she wanted to. She's doing really well in the business, and there's a chance for her to move into a full-time job. And if she was a non-family member, we probably would have tapped her immediately, because it's hard to find people right now, and she's excelling at it. And we just want to increase her hours, and we'll put her on that's in full, right? But she's a family member. She did not follow the path. She did not go do 3 years. Now, she's got a degree, but she did not work outside, and she did not interview to get that job. She just started with a part-time thing because she filled a need. They for an hour, Dave, we had the debate. How do we both support her and encourage her to be here and do what's fair, so that nobody thinks she didn't earn her way in here, that she isn't, that she's shortcutting the efforts, and because that set her up for scrutiny and whispers and relationships that maybe, aren't good, if there's belief that she got special treatment, which is the definition of nepotism, right? So it's the willingness, I would say. How do we get around that nepotism thing? It's the willingness to engage in those difficult conversations where there's no right answer, but we're trying our very best to do what's right for an individual case in a big family. We're trying to do what's right for the business and bring those together.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to draw that out so that we could, just throw some curveballs and, let people hear, what the work you're doing by these obstacles, if you like, because people listening aren't family owners, and like myself, I wouldn't have been a family business owner. Could have been, I suppose, but I definitely wouldn't have wanted to go down that route. Some people would. Some people, like you say, don't have a choice. They're just born into it or whatever, But the Singapore model is a unique success story. So a place like Hong Kong, Shanghai is pretty much, part of, just the way the country evolved, whereas Singapore just started from scratch and made a new set of rules, and it's something completely different, so.
A real opportunity. There are certainly some very large family businesses that are, in Singapore and that are active and successful.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that there isn't any at all. I just knew that was one of the things that he set out to do that made it successful, as well as some of the, as I say, anti-racial laws and a lot of other things, because obviously it's a very clean country, and I've been there once only, but it's there's lots of countries that are clean, but you know what I'm talking.
But I'd say, Dave, to me, what I hear you describing is somebody who's really committed to good governance. And that is like, I've been to Hamilton 3 or 4 times, and there's it's really amazing to watch. That is a family business consultant, because there certainly are similarities between trying to govern a new country and trying to govern a family business. And the example I remember from there was, Jefferson and Hamilton. So Jefferson's Virginia and Hamilton's New York. I'm probably going to get this wrong because I'm horrible at history, but Hamilton, New York had a lot of debts from the Revolutionary War because they funded a lot of the war by debt. Virginia didn't have any debt from the Civil War or from the Revolutionary War because they had cotton, I think, and plantations, right? And so they had a lot of natural resources that allowed them to continue to sell important things and generate revenue. They didn't have to borrow any money. They're talking about creating this federated state, or the country, putting these two together. And Jefferson's like, why the heck would I take your debt on? That wasn't my problem. We did fine. why in the world would I do that? And to me, that's very similar. Like it's this family, it's another paradox of individuals have their own needs, and they've, to earn or to perform in a career or to make decisions, and the company or the business needs a set of things. Sometimes those overlap really well, but the more people we get in the system, the harder it is to make those match. So how do we make the organization's needs and the individual's needs overlap? And we have to talk about that constantly, because both of them are evolving, and create those expectations, just like the Singapore leader did, and say,
Yeah.
here's the rules. Let's have a conversation about it. We'll keep evolving them, but if you know the rules, you can perform a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, countries like, well, certainly, definitely British is very traditional. So there's lots of family history going right back to the royal family and everything. So, it's the
Yes.
complete opposite,
Yes.
which is why they went independent, Singapore, and obviously America's the same. Like you said, you've, described it right back to the independence of America, and that
Mm-hmm.
the same thing has its history linked there, or maybe even back to the British historical things. But anyway, let's not go down the politic rule or anything like that. Let's go back to your work. Well, let's get back to your book. And you probably answered this question already with our conversation. But before we close the show, let's get back to your book, Own It. How do family enterprise owners develop a mindset at every age?
So one of the principles we really believe is that, when there's 7 or 8 in the book that underlie the mindset, but one of them is continuous learning. So grasping what it takes to be an owner, whether you inherit or you put your own money in, we think the best way is to start early and then reinforce that learning through the whole life. Continue to engage in enhancing your understanding of the rights, responsibilities, the rewards of ownership. As soon as a toddler can say mine about toy or a loved object, they probably get the idea of ownership. And we have an opportunity as parents at that point to reinforce that, yes, it's yours. And who takes care of it? How do we take care of it? What happens if we don't take care of it?
Yep. Hello, Barbara. Are you there? Just lost you for a minute. Hopefully, we'll get you back in a minute.
Work through the whole idea. Like, we're no experts on parenting, but certainly early in folks' lives, parenting is a big impact on ownership mindset, because thinking about how to share with people, how to take care of things you own, how to be a steward of something that maybe isn't yours, but that you're helping to care for, again, in a system, as a
Yep.
team, not just as an individual, those can all really be helpful early. So that's
Right.
one principle is, trying to start early.
Fantastic, Barbara. Well, we could talk forever. As I say,
Yeah.
this show tends to be now around the 30-minute mark. It used to be longer. I mean,
Yeah.
if it had to be, I could obviously try and find some ways to do it, but Zoom doesn't allow me to do that these days.
Yeah.
So no, it's fantastic having you on the show to speak about this angle of it. As I said, I've had a guest before, and I like to have a variety on the show, which I ask questions just drawing out my own experience and throwing it back at you to, because I've had a politics degree. I'm not just a firefighter. I've done sports. So when I have someone come on with fitness or sportsman's mindset, sports person's life mindset, so this mindset is around, a combination of what I experienced in life, which I brought up, the first conversation about ending in tears and things like that. So yeah, no, it's great to have this insight from you. And, I always like to, get these little questions out, and you've done well and answered quite well. You obviously, working as a consultant in this area.
Good. It's been fun.
Yeah. Could you tell us, owners, our listeners, where they can find your book and more about your consultancy work and where they can find that before we go?
Yeah, that would be great. So my firm is called the Family Business Consulting Group, and we're at the fbcg.com. We have hundreds of articles and webinars, tons of resources there, and there's a good search function. So if you've got interest in family business or family enterprise, please go check us out. We've got lots to offer. And then there's 30 consultants across the US and Canada that support family businesses. That's all we do, is supporting family businesses. The book itself is available at our website, but also on Amazon. And yeah, it's under Own It.
Excellent.
But you need to put Own It and Family Enterprise in, because there are other books named Own It.
Yeah. Well, once I see your name as well, and obviously it's co-authored, so they'll see that it's co-authored as well. Then obviously it will be the title will be in this podcast title, which is they will see. But
Perfect.
Barbara Dartt, not Dartt. Thanks for coming on the show and let me pick your brains. That's what it was, a brain picking session for me actually, which was great.
It was fun. It was very fun.
No, it was good. It was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on here and have this conversation for my audience today.
Thank you, Dave. Have a great week.
You too. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.